Good evening, I'm Sav Jonesa and welcome to APTN National News. An injunction has been granted to end a blockade at the Brady landfill in Winnipeg. Protesters have been camped at the site since December, calling on a search for the remains of 3 Indigenous women at 2 landfills in the city. The blockade was created last week after the province decided a search is not feasible. Now they have until 6 p.m. Central Time this evening to take it down. Tamara Pimentel has more.
Supporters of this blockade are on standby. Manitoba's Court of King's Bench has granted an injunction giving police the authority to remove the barrier as of 6 p.m. tonight. Jordan Myron is the sister of Mercedes Myron, one of 3 women whose remains may be in a Winnipeg landfill.
It's horrible. It's why is the government still treating our people like this?
The injunction will allow for a peaceful protest as long as the road remains opened. But Myron says the landfill needs to be shut down.
I think it's disgusting that the government's still allowing people to dump trash on top of women that are buried here.
The injunction will allow for a peaceful protest as long as the road remains opened. But Myron says the landfill needs to be shut down. Those calling for a search of both the Prairie Green and Brady landfills put up the blockade after the Manitoba government made a final call to not search the landfill for remains. In response, the city requested an injunction. On Thursday, a judge called on the lawyers of both parties to find a resolution. When court continued on Friday, he was told an agreement was not met.
The order of that nature would allow the police to detain somebody, arrest them, and then release them on an undertaking.
Sasha Paul is the lawyer representing some of the protesters.
In terms of next steps, I need to seek the appropriate instructions from my clients to see what needs to be done in light of the fact that they're continuing to raise the issue of searching landfills for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. That's a point that gets lost in the legal technicalities, but it's a point that remains fundamentally important to them.
Back at the landfill, Myron is calling for all the support they can get as they wait for the city to move in at 6 o'clock. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The Assembly of First Nations meeting wrapped up in Halifax on Thursday, and it was a busy week. APTN reporter Fraser Needham was there, and he joins us today to recap the week. Fraser, thanks so much for joining us. So first off...
Thank you for having me.
So first off, what would you say were some of the highlights of the Assembly?
Well, there's always these things that are so packed with many things going on, but I think definitely the first day kind of dealt with introduction of the new interim chief, who's Joanna Bernard now, and dealt with Roseanne Archibald, I guess, former national chief who was been deposed, and sort of they dealt with that. She wasn't included on the agenda to reinstate her. And then there was also the release of the report on sexual orientation and gender-based discrimination, and appearance by Jody Wilson-Raybould, the former Attorney General. And those are some of the bigger highlights of the week.
Well, so let's talk about Roseanne Archibald for a moment. Has the organization, for all intents and purposes, moved on from the former national chief?
I think they have, actually. They, the writing was sort of on the wall with her when she sort of decided not to attend in person, and I think she was sort of soliciting support, had sent out a memo, and then really it didn't go anywhere to get her on the agenda on the first day. But I will say it was quite a bit nasty, actually. Her supporters were were kind of shut down, and she was actually blocked on video eventually as a proxy voter, so it was a little bit high-handed, but she was nowhere to be seen after that, and it appears her career, for now anyway, with the AFN is done.
So what about the sexual discrimination report? Is this a step forward?
I think it really is. You know, this was it was based on a resolution at a previous assembly, and of course they did it. They hired 3 women to do the report. and they talked to many different people in the organization, their stories, and some of them were not very nice stories. It's a problem for the organization, as for many organizations, and I think actually talking about this and having a report and making some recommendations is a real step forward. I will say, though, we've had the situation with Archibald, of course, who was accused of the organization of lateral violence itself and made the executive. And I think she does have some justification for saying that, and it appears, that, the rules don't always apply to the people in leadership, and they kind of have to walk the talk, right? Like every organization, if they're going to have substantive change.
And quickly, what about the forensic audit? Is this going to happen anytime soon?
I would not count on that. There doesn't seem a lot of interest in doing it. There was a resolution passed to set the parameters of, how much it might cost and the scope, but that could have been already done. This was called for a year ago, and there's been zero movement on it. And if you talk to people in the higher levels of the AFN, they seem to feel they don't need to do this, that that it's in these audited financial statements that they release, but those aren't comprehensive. And I think really some of the allegations that have been made need to be looked into, and they need to have a more comprehensive audit. But the will to do that at the higher levels does not seem to be there right now.
Okay, well, we'll have to end it there. But once again, thanks so much for joining us today, Fraser.
Well, thanks very much for having me.
A member of the McLeod Lake Indian Band is speaking out against her own people's logging company and its practices. She was shocked when informed 90% of their treaty lands had been logged out. Tanya Solanas has been frustrated trying to get information until recent reporting by the Tyee provided her with solid numbers. Nearly 2 million cubic meters of forest, worth $140 million, were logged over a 10-year period. Over half of this logging occurred in 2019. Solanas remembers at the age of 12, her people set up a blockade that ended clear-cut logging. Seeing this devastation now is unbearable.
I was devastated. I was actually crying when that happened, because I could finally see, because when you're driving by, you can see it. And I would get very emotional when I was driving by as well. But to actually be up there and see how far it goes and just completely clear cut.
The band's logging company did not respond to us by airtime, but have told members the intense logging was due to pine beetle infestation. A new report by Statistics Canada reveals the overrepresentation of Indigenous people inside provincial institutions. The 2-year study looked at adult correctional services in 5 provinces. Overrepresentation is highest in Saskatchewan, where Indigenous adults are behind bars at a rate 17.7 times higher than the non-Indigenous population, followed by Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario, and Nova Scotia, which is lowest at 1.9. Indigenous women in provincial correctional facilities is 15.4 times higher than non-Indigenous women, and the rate of Indigenous men is 8.4 times higher. According to the report, overrepresentation is due to many things, including colonialism, socioeconomic and cultural marginalization, and systemic discrimination. We are going to take a quick break now, but coming up, how a gathering in River Cree Nation is empowering women. Stick around. Welcome back. The inaugural Strength from the Storm Women's Gathering brought healing, music, and laughter to River Cree Nation in Manitoba. Here's more on that story. A celebration of women's strengths rolled into River Cree Nation during their first ever women's gathering. Strength from the Storm showered participants from across Turtle Island with teachings, songs, and ceremony to remind them of their power.
Sometimes those storms that we walk through in life are tough and hard, challenging, but when you get through it, in whatever hardship you're going through or whatever storm you're walking through, you get past it and you know that you can do and face anything.
Hosted by the First Nation Healing Center, Executive Director Katina Cochran says women in the community have been asking for an event like this for years.
It has a lot to do with being silenced for so long as women, as Indigenous women, and like years of oppression and feeling like we don't have a voice or our place and our role was taken from us.
The 3 days were filled with performances by Indigenous women like hoop dancers and musical trio, the Barehead Sisters. Emotions were high while event staff shared performance art on the signs of domestic abuse. Workshops focused on everything from culture to femininity and the arts. Doll making was a big hit for those looking to connect with their inner child. One workshop organizer, Wanda Murdoch, says the process teaches nurturing and care, something some women may not have had as young girls due to difficult childhoods.
We went through a lot of trauma during our growing up, so this is a great teaching of our childhood memories that we need to learn to play again.
I'm making myself the person I wanted to be, so I'm making a doll that's going to be me from life, from childhood to now. And every once in a while I'll be looking at it, right? Referring back and then coming to the reality of life.
For Nelson House's Darlene Spence, making her own doll reminded her of her mother.
Brings back a lot of memories, and she's passed on already. And I'm sitting here like her teaching is here, right? She's here.
Fisher River Cree Nation councillor Hilary Murdoch says space for women to focus on themselves is important in their busy lives.
As women, we put everybody first. Mm-hmm. Everybody gets put first. We'll put our kids, we'll put other people's health before ours, but here we get to focus on us, on what we need, on what our spiritual needs are, and everyone's going to walk away with something.
Within northwestern Ontario's Lake of the Woods region, Naukamegwaning's First Nation, formerly Whitefish Bay, hosted its 50th anniversary powwow over the weekend. On Friday night, judges announced 13-year-old Ashanti Wilson as Miss Naukamegwaning. Video journalist Carly Schogner has this for us.
I think it was very empowering to dance and for it to slowly be coming back. And it's very connecting to Mother Earth. My name is Ashanti Wilson, and I'm from Naukamegwaning First Nation.
We're going to make this one a spot dance also.
What's your name?
$100
my name is
donated by
and I'm
Isabel
from
White family.
Naukamegwaning First Nation.
I think it's very special to be here on the 50th anniversary and be Princess.
Anytime you're ready, you have an 8 to travel song.
Being from here too.
You're welcome.
Been doing fancy style ever since I was little. I used to dance jingle, but one day I just decided to dance fancy, and I've stuck to it since. Being the home to the jingle dress.
I think it's a very beautiful style to dance. And I love seeing everybody dancing around in jingle. It's really beautiful.
Any words of thought to other youth or other young women who are interested and want to continue either fancy shawl dancing or jingle dress dancing?
Just keep trying and practicing, and just do it for fun, not for anyone or anything else. Dance for your community. The
North American Indigenous Games kick off this weekend in Halifax. We'll introduce you to some of the athletes taking part after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Here's a young eagle preparing to launch into flight to start off your weekend. Thanks to Clarence Jones for sharing this photo taken along the Skeena River in the Gitxsan Nation. If you're out taking photos this weekend, send a photo or two to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. St. John's is 25 and Fredericton is 24. Happy Valley Goose Bay is 29 and Cartwright is 28. Quebec City is 26, Montreal 28. North Bay is 25, Ottawa is 28. Timmins is 25 and Thunder Bay is also 25. Pucketwagan is 16 and Churchill is 8. Winnipeg is 23 and Barons River is 17. Saskatoon is 23 and Regina is 22. Stony Rapids is 25 and Meadow Lake is 22. Fort McMurray is 24, Peace River is 25. Medicine Hat is 29 and Red Deer is 24. Vancouver is 25 and Kamloops is 30. Fort Nelson is 24, Prince Rupert 17. Rock River is 16 and Mayo is 26. Yellowknife is 23, Fort Simpson 28. 24 in Inuvik and 15 in Sax Harbor. Baker Lake is 20, Cambridge Bay is 16. Igloolik is 10 and Resolute is 11. With summer season in full effect and scorching temperatures across the country, many people are flocking to the water for a chance to cool off. In Manitoba, a group of Indigenous youth are doing just that. But for them, it's all work and little play as they prepare to compete at the North American Indigenous Games. Daryl Stranger has more.
No.
Athletes and coaches from Manitoba's Canoe Kayak teams are putting the final touches on preparations ahead of the NAG Games in Halifax next week. Assistant coach Frederick Spence says the games are an opportunity for youth to dream big.
For a large percentage of the youth going to these games, sometimes it's their first time in an airplane, seeing a whole new city, you know, the vastness of it. It can expand horizons. It can open up their minds to what is possible.
He is trying to be a role model as much as he is a coach.
I had some struggles as a youth myself, Indigenous youth. That's not an uncommon thing, and so my passion comes to trying to help the youth, a little bit of guidance that I wish I had a bit more of, and just showing up for them, doing my best to do that anyway.
For Paige Papanicus, this is her second time at NAG and shared what she loved about her first experience.
It was scary, but also really exciting because I was with my friends and we were going to go compete for our favorite sports.
Paige has now grown into a role on the team where others lean on her experience for support and guidance.
I like it. I help them get their boats ready, and a lot of them are really appreciative too, so it makes me feel like even more happier to be here. So yeah, it makes me more excited for sure, yeah.
Justice Papanicus will be competing in the under-16 category for Canoe Kayak.
I'm looking forward to meeting other people and making more friends. Yeah, I like being on the water. It calms me a bit.
Connie Constant is also a coach with the team and shared the importance of something like canoe and kayak.
I'd say there's a lack of resources, right? Just living in an isolated community, there's lack of resources, lack of funding, so you try and do what you can with what you have.
Nevia Caribou is competing in the under-19 category, and being on the water runs in the family.
I've been canoeing, paddling since I was a little girl. My family is really competitive when it comes to paddling, so yeah, they definitely pulled me into their whole paddling journey.
One common theme among both coaches and athletes is the excitement of being able to attend this year's games.
Oh my gosh, I am very excited. I actually look forward to meeting a lot of new athletes because there is going to be a lot of athletes from around the country, and to definitely share my experience with them, ask questions and stuff like that.
Everything's brand new, it's exciting and positive. It's positive. That's what our youth need every day, day in, day out.
Canoe Kayak gets underway July 17th on Lake Bannock. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And here's a look at a Team Sask athlete. 14-year-old Helena Buffalo is from Beardy's and Okamasas Cree Nation. She'll be playing soccer for Team Sask in girls under 16. Helena also plays in the Saskatchewan Soccer Association, and her team took second in the Saskatchewan Soccer Association Provincials in Regina last weekend. She has never seen the ocean or been to Halifax, so she's excited to see both in the next few days.
I'm just really looking forward to being able to play and representing my own res in Halifax.
Athletes from Canada's smallest territory will soon be headed to the North American Indigenous Games. As Sarah Connors tells us, supporters of Team Yukon wanted to send the young competitors off in true Yukon fashion.
For many athletes on Team Yukon, the North American Indigenous Games is a once, maybe twice in a lifetime opportunity. That's why their send-off to what's often coined the Indigenous Olympics wouldn't be complete without a pep rally and celebration. While sport is at the forefront of the Games, there's also a focus on connecting with Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. It's something Jasper Charlie of the Little Salmon Carmacks First Nation is looking forward to.
Down in, I think it's Arizona, the Navajo people, they're closely related to the North Shoshone people of LSCFN, so it'd be great to hear legends and stories from their elders.
For others, competing in one of their first major sporting event can be nerve-wracking.
Nervous, but mainly excited. I've heard really good things about it. So.
I'm very nervous about some of the teams that we're playing against, but I know that we've been practicing and that we're very ready to do this.
But organizers say the team has faced challenges in recent years. Many young athletes aged out during the COVID pandemic, and some programming wasn't available in communities.
Not a lot of community kids came forward, so hopefully in the next 3 or 4 years we can build up that capacity again.
While it was all smiles leading up to the big event, there was also some business to attend to, like posing for a group photo.
Everybody looking right here, smiling.
And announcing the team's flag bearer.
And is one of the Yukon's most accomplished Indigenous swimmers.
Team Yukon leaves for Jabuktuk or Halifax on Saturday. With the support of the territory behind them, athletes like Charlie say they have what they need to take home gold.
It's going to be great. And hopefully I'll win. I'll definitely win, yeah.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
That's all we have for your APTN National News this Friday evening. Thanks so much for sharing your time with us today, and have a great weekend.